coming to you, Your Excellency, listening to all of this, where do you see public sector role in facilitating what the two gentlemen just described from a policy regulatory perspective?
I think that the public sector must see the private sector as partners and not an irritant. In the past times, it's like, oh, this sector is just about profit and all that. And so the public sector had tended to crowd out the private sector. Now everybody uses the hackneyed phrase that the private sector is the engine of growth. But how does an engine operate if you don't give it the right fuel, healthy fuel, engine oil, hydraulic oil for it to be able to operate properly? And so that's the role of the public sector. We must create policy that creates the framework for an enabling environment for the private sector to grow. The private sector is not Father Christmas. It will go where it can get a good rate of return on investment. And so it's government's duty to create the space for the public sector to exercise its creativity. And that is what we need to reorient the public sector to do. I was Minister of Communications in the early days when the tech, ICT sector was exploding. And people were coming home and asking for licenses to set up internet cafes. And if you saw our regulator and the conditions you had to meet and all that, I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, by the time you go through that list, you would not be able to start anything. And so when I became minister, I said, but why license them? If you want to set up an internet cafe, why don't you just open it if you have the investment? And when we did, internet cafes exploded across the country. They didn't cause any harm. They didn't lead to any coup d'etat, nothing. When we're liberalizing our telecom space, they said, oh, telecom is so important. You cannot give it to the private sector. You know, it's sensitive. The CIA would listen into our conversations and all that. I mean, today, look at the telecom sector. It's contributing so much to the GDP of Africa's growth. So what we need to do is to create the right environment for the young people to thrive. We should not over-regulate. I met with the fintechs last year during the campaign, and I was asking them, what are your problems? And they said over-regulation. Why don't you ease it up so that we can invest more? And so I think that we must not be too sensitive in guarding and trying to regulate and all that. We must create the space so that these young people can exercise their creative talents and contribute to sustainable growth in our countries.
Your Excellency, please keep your mic for a second, because I'm going to fully exploit having you here with us for a few minutes now to ask you, maybe because I know you have to leave, one last question from your perspective. We're here in Japan. We are operating from a kind of a ticket platform here, which has a core content around co-creation. And we just heard Jimmy talk about what Japan could offer to this space. When you think about really what we walk away from Ticket 9 on, when we think about unleashing the superpower of our young people on innovation and economic diversification, how would you craft this sort of collaboration? How would you frame the collaboration between Africa and Japan? What would be important in forging the kind of collaboration that yields co-creation, that then yields transformation, and eventually what you started with, which is creating jobs at scale?
Well, I don't think that we walk away from TICAD, we wave a magic wand and everything happens. While we expect that we move from just handouts and ODA to trade and investment with our Japanese counterparts, there is also an obligation on us as leaders of Africa to create the kind of space that makes it possible. One, we need governance reform. We need to reduce corruption. we must have accountable governance. Our people must feel that their resources are being put to good use. We must make sure that our economies are stable and predictable, so that if a Japanese investor wants to come and invest or partner with our young people in the service industry or in industry or fintech or whatever, he knows that he has a stable, predictable environment to be able to make that investment, and that he is able to repatriate his profit if he is able to make that profit. And so there's a lot that behoves on us as leadership to create the right platform in Africa for that investment to be able to take place. TICAD 8 pledged $30 billion for investment in Africa. I'd like to see what the audits of that would be, how much went into what. But I believe that the environment in Africa is better now at TICAD 9 than it was in TICAD 8, because now we have the African Continental Free Trade Area. We have the beginning of a basis to bring the continent together, be able to set up in one country, but have a market of 1.4 billion people instead of a market of 33 million people in Ghana. And so we have a better platform today after TICAD 9 than we had after TICAD 8. And like my brother from the African Finance Corporation said, while the African Continental Free Trade Area is a game changer, we still need to put in the infrastructure to be able to trade amongst ourselves. If I want to export something from Ghana to Kenya, tariff-free, duty-free, even though we've signed the protocols, it's most likely that I'll put it on a boat. That boat will go to Europe before it comes back to Africa and to Kenya. And so my freight costs are going to be higher. And so the savings that I make in terms of being able to export duty-free, tariff-free are consumed by extra freight charges. And so there's still a lot that we need to do in Africa to be able to fully tap the potential. But I believe that Japan has the innovation, Japan has the technology, Africa has the natural resources, Africa has the young, innovative people. And if TICAD brings those two factors together, I believe that it would have been worth our while staying in Yokohama for 3 days.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. And if you would allow, we would like to excuse His Excellency at this moment because he has another commitment while we sort of wrap up with the rest of the panelists. Thank you once again. A big round of applause, please, for His Excellency. Thank you so much. If I may, as we start to conclude, if I may come back to this question that His Excellency just answered to the rest of the panelists, and I'm going to start from this end, from my immediate right to the end, one after the other. If you could please address this